New developments in the hacking of Google in China. The Financial Times reports the U.S. has identified the man whose programming code is thought to be behind the attack. The report says he is not a full-time government worker and did not launch the attack. Just last week, the U.S. held its own cybersecurity drill. Experts agree the government, as well as our biggest companies, are vulnerable to what some call a cyber Pearl Harbor. We wanted to see for ourselves what exactly that means. So tonight, Drew Griffin of CNN's Special Investigations Unit gets unprecedented access to a place most of us never knew existed.
We do not advertise to the public what goes on inside this facility.
We can't tell you where we are. This building is a national security asset run exclusively for the government by a private contractor, the Harris Corporation.
The folks on this side are actually doing things which causes the network to operate.
Former Air Force General Dale Meyerose now is a vice president at Harris. But the job is almost exactly the same as when he wore a uniform and worked to prevent computer attacks against the military. Most government computer networks, he says, are constantly getting barraged with cyber attacks. He and his staff are paid to keep one vital network secure.
Attack is a certainty. The fact that there's attacks going on now and will go on tomorrow is a certitude.
Deliberate attacks?
Deliberate attacks.
This network would be very tempting to any potential cyber terrorist. If it was disrupted, the lives of thousands of people could very suddenly be at risk. But when you look at most government and corporate networks, the real threat right now may not be from terrorists, but from criminals.
We already lose $1 trillion a year through cyber and cybercrime.
According to a private computer watchdog company called NetWitness, hackers in Europe and China broke into nearly 2,500 corporate and government computer networks over the past 18 months, exposing vast sums of money to theft. Who's behind something like this? Not likely to be Al-Qaeda, with its headquarters in remote caves. Cyber expert James Lewis says the threat is more likely to come from those who back terrorists or hostile governments trying to damage the U.S. from within.
This is a major problem for national security, but it has to do more with espionage, with crime, and with the potential risk to critical infrastructure, but it's not terror.
Power grids shutting down, ATMs no longer functioning, large metro rail systems squealing to a stop would have major psychological fallout. But what is happening now is more of a cyber crime spree.
This is a global phenomenon. We're even seeing in Africa now. When African countries get their high-speed interconnection, the first thing that happens is they become a source, sometimes unwittingly, of cybercrime.
General Meyerose says bashing China may actually be pointing us in the wrong direction because cyber criminals move from server to server across the world.
First of all, many of the attacks don't necessarily emanate direct from China. I think those end up coming from elsewhere. But our intelligence folks and our government
masked to look like China because China's a boogeyman?
Perhaps.
What you would need to defend against all this is something like you're seeing in this room. This is a state-of-the-art system largely because the government can afford to pay for it. Any hardware, software, anything introduced to the system is first torn down to its very roots, searched for viruses or implanted Trojan horses, tested again and again before any of those components can enter the system. But very few private companies can really afford to replicate this. Stepping up cyber defenses, say the experts we talked with, all depends on what you can afford and how much risk you're willing to bear.
And Drew Griffin is joining us right now. Drew, I guess the question is, with all the other threats out there, how do you convince people that the real threat may, in fact, be from computer hackers?
Yeah, how to convince them that there's a real threat and that it's going to affect them. This is the problem with this kind of cyber terror, which really right now, as we said in the piece, is cyber crime. Until that cyber Pearl Harbor happens, until the Northeast power grid shuts down or all the ATMs for several breaks don't work, it's not going to resonate through the companies that are hit or the public at large that this is really a threat. But Campbell, they say this threat is out there waiting to happen and that we should be defending against it now.
Drew Griffin for us tonight. Drew, thanks.